everybody. Great to have you guys joining us today. Gonna get started here. There's Allison. We got some music still playing with us. Look at, you've got your bottles there. Oh, do we have her unmuted?
I just took myself off mute. Hi, friends.
There you go. So awesome. Good morning, Allison.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing very well. So welcome to July 2nd. I think a lot of people are kicking off their 4th of July weekend. I decided I might try to do that too. Why not start drinking at 11 o'clock in the morning, right? Thursday, July 2nd. But just a couple housekeeping things, and then we will get right into everything with you, Allison, and today. Remember, you know, the whole purpose, and Allison, one of the main reasons actually we started the Disruptor Connection was an event we did with you a couple months ago, and where you shared your story and I hosted an event. But this is for disruptive leaders, disruptive thinkers around the world. And so we're really excited to have everybody. Also, there is a one-pager. If you did not download the one-pager, the link is in the chat session. Download that. Got some great stuff that we're going to talk off of that today around with Allison, as well as a Q&A session. I do have the questions and answers up so we can get through those as we're going through today. You know, it's truly exciting. Allison, you and I met a couple months ago, again, hosting a virtual happy hour as we were in the middle of the beginning of the pandemic with 25 innovation leaders. And we just came to love you and to love your story. Most importantly, I live in Cincinnati, right across the street from, or the river street, I say the street, right across the river from Kentucky, which is bourbon capital, Tennessee whiskey capital. And I thought, what could this whiskey taste like? So you so inspired us with this, Allison, that we actually, there's a few of us that have the 10-year-old bottle. And if you see on it, we actually had it engraved and it says Disruptor Connection on it.
That's amazing.
And so those are some special bottles, but then many of our team members got these bottles that are helping on this. And some of them are in Arizona, so it's 8 o'clock in the morning. So they may be drinking at 8 o'clock this morning. But they're like, it's great. My boss is allowing me to drink. So, you know, Allison, again, we've talked a couple times and your story is so fascinating. And we called this From Barre to Barre, B-A-R-R-E, for those of you that don't know much about the ballet world, but from a ballet bar to a bar, and then gut, grit, fire, and disruption. So Allison, would you just share with the group a little bit about that story? And you know, we're going to talk about some of your lessons learned and some of your rules throughout today, but just a little bit of your story of why From Barre to Barre. What happened?
Yeah. Thank you. And also thank you to everyone who is tuning in and listening. And I think especially right now for people who identify as and who are disruptors, this is such a crazy time in history, right? Because maybe you had your business and it's up and running and you're almost seeing the light at the end of the tunnel or wherever you are on that journey. And then everything just happened. And so I've seen, and I'm sure, Sean, I'm sure you're the same, like, it just seems like so many of my friends who are entrepreneurs and disruptors seem to be somewhere on this spectrum of, and usually on like an end of a spectrum of like, oh my God, I'm starting over. Yeah. To I've already closed my business and I've pivoted and done something else. Or maybe they've figured out how to pivot their existing business. So I thank you for this Disruptor Connection. I thank you for this time to talk. I think these conversations are really important because I know for me, I have a lot of my identity wrapped up in being a disruptor and being an entrepreneur. And, you know, especially during COVID when I'm faced with, holy shit, is this like another day of going, oh my God, am I closing my business? You know, thank God, no. But you know, those are real moments. So thank you for letting me share my story.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to keep you in business, Allison. I keep ordering more and more. I give this to everybody now because it's such I fell so much in love with this whiskey.
Thank you. Well, so yeah, so a lot of people have come to know me as like the ballerina who started a whiskey company. If anyone happens to read the fine print, they might see that it is a French whiskey, and clearly I don't have a French accent. But you know, when you think about ballet, and I was a professional from 9 years old to 23, so I like really negotiated my first contract at 9 years old to the shock of my parents. And when, you know, that life is really kind of an incredible experience, especially as a young person. You learn what discipline means, you know, you learn how to put on your blinders and get focused on the mission. You learn a whole bunch of skills that I think are quite applicable to the entrepreneurial existence. And the reality of that life is it's also very restricting, both calorically and socially. Right? So all you're doing is like not eating, not drinking, dancing all the time, and you're never going out with friends. So when I left that industry at 23 years old, and I was in New York City and like got my first job with a salary, and people were like, let's go out for drinks. I was like, what does that mean? What do you mean go out for drinks? So I
remember you sharing that, like you didn't even understand what that concept was.
No. And people are like, I was like, what do you order at a bar and how do you order? And they're like, just get the Merlot, or someone will be like, just get a Manhattan. And I just had no idea what any of that meant, right? And my family is all mostly scientists or entrepreneurs. And so I knew to ask why and how, and I just started grabbing a bunch of books and like doing a lot of Google searches, and I just wanted to get my head around what drinks meant. Like, what is alcohol? So I like, you know, wine, beer, spirits, break down spirits, keep going down all those rabbit holes. And I found whiskey. I fell in love with whiskey. And then I started asking a lot of questions that I had just recently studied about from the wine industry and applying it to whiskey. And I realized in the early 2000s, no one was thinking about making a whiskey the way I was asking questions. And as all good entrepreneurs do, right? All of a sudden you find a string and you're like, no one's holding on to the end of this. I'm gonna keep pulling and let's see where this goes. And so it very, you know, not very quickly, but very quickly in the retelling of this, I somehow found myself in France asking people to make a single malt whiskey made of all local and indigenous ingredients to effectively show terroir. Terroir is just a fancy French word for saying a sense of place in the taste, right? It's why a sommelier can open up a bottle of wine in the States, in Japan, and anywhere and say, oh, just by smelling it and tasting it, it's from this mountain region in France, right? So I was going, does anyone have a single malt in the whiskey industry that is reflective of that, right? Just by smell and taste. Oh, don't worry, PA, we got you.
You're seeing it, I know. I'm like, I know how to get it to you. We've got it to everybody if we need to.
Yeah,
not that we're bootlegging.
It's the pivot, man. I think in every entrepreneur's journey, and sometimes once a day or multiple times a day, you get to that moment where you're just like, fuck it. And you have to just figure out how to move through the next barrier, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so that was kind of it. And I met this third generation cognac maker, and then I had to understand what cognac was, and I had learned all this technical information. I'd gone to Scotland, I'd studied how to make whiskey, I bring it back to France. I danced with Joffrey Ballet, by the way, that question just came up in the chat. And I was in France and I met this guy, and I was like 24 at the time, and he was 28, and he was willing to like do this weird terroir driven whiskey made in France with me. And I was like, great, so we're just gonna like get started. And he was like, yeah, I just need some money. And I was like, right, money makes sense. Right, I have a college degree in jazz hands, so I hadn't like thought about the business side of this.
Yes, we talk about our jazz hands, right?
He was like, I don't know, maybe to get started, I just need like 82,000. And I was like, okay, is that like $82,000 or euros? And he was like, no, dollars would be okay. And I literally had $86,000 in my savings account. And I was like, cool. So if you get this money, we're gonna be good. We're just gonna go. And I wired in my life savings. I was like, I got 2 months of rent left in the bank for my 5th floor walk up in New York City. And I don't know, Brenne was somehow born through a miraculous challenges and wall climbing.
Yeah, I mean, so just so like Allison's nonchalantly talking about this, like, right? Like, oh no, she had $86,000 to her name and wired a stranger $82,000 in a foreign country. Like, let's be real. Like, this is an entrepreneur disruptor. Like, holy fuck, what are we doing? Right? Like,
but would still do that, but 24-year-old totally did that.
Right. Totally get it. So we talked about these lessons that you have learned through your grit. First off, you tackled an industry that was male dominated. Right. And you shared some of your stories with our team. I would love for you to share with the group here around even how you were approached when you were in France. And they thought you were the young, pretty girl, right? Like, but you found this and still today, right? Am I correct? The only whiskey still being distilled over there, single malt whiskey, right?
No.
In the region?
Shocking. In the cognac region, no, now we do have one more. When I started in all of France, I was number 4 or 5, depending on who was open and closed. And now there's over 65 distilleries.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of them come up to me in the shows. Well, they used to, they don't anymore because now they look at me as competition. But back in the day when they were starting, they were like, Allison, we are so inspired by the success you've had with Brenne, so we thought peut-être I make a whiskey aussi, as well. I was like, cool, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So let's talk about you, and again, those of you that have downloaded the one pager, you have this, some of your lessons learned through your grit, Allison, is, clear vision and a flexible goal, right? Know the value of your product and service. Embrace the criticism, move with the fear and rejection, be courageous despite the fear, and put yourself out there. Like 6 really, what I would say are big statements, big goals. I live by them pretty much as well, but not everyone is comfortable. So but I would love for you to talk around, in particular, I love these 2 where you're talking about move with the fear and rejection, and then be courageous despite the fear, right? What did that teach you? How did that help you with Brenne? Like, what did that bring about to make you keep going?
Yeah, it's a good question. When I was really young, I was one of those kids who was, taken to Sunday school every single Sunday for her whole childhood. And I remember overhearing a woman say to my mother, that I'm the 3rd daughter in my family. There's only 3 kids. We're all women. I'm the 3rd. And I was number 3, right? And I heard this woman say to my mother, that 3rd one of yours is really fearless. And I don't remember how old I was. I was I was old enough to understand the kind of distinction. And I just turned around and I walked up and I was like, excuse me, Mrs. Rohr, I'm not without fear. I'm just courageous enough to move through it. She was like, but I think that's really important, right? We like to label people that we see in doing something that perhaps we haven't had the courage or we don't think we have the tools or something to do ourselves. And we go, oh, well, they're just fearless. And it's like, no, I think we all have fear, and it's just about acknowledging the fear and going, cool, I see this now. What am I going to do with it? And then do you just move it over here and try and kind of go around it, right? Or work with it in some way. So I think move with fear and rejection. You have to also just accept, especially if you're a disruptor, right? Especially if you're doing something that has never been done. No one has made a whiskey the way I made Brenne. No one in the entire world, no one in the 250-year history, actually more, history of making whiskey anywhere in the world, did anyone ever try to make a whiskey this way? And so you have to understand, if you're doing that, if you're doing something that hasn't been done before, rejection has to be part of the game, right? Because if you don't have any rejection and you just have acceptance, then you're probably not doing something original.
I love that. Of course, I love the I'm not without fear, I'm just courageous enough to move through it. And Cody on here gave you a big bravo. We'll give jazz hands for right? Like, right? But we talk a ton about what you just talked about. If we're not being rejected, or we're not pushing hard enough, then we're probably not doing anything that's really disruptive or anything that's challenging to the status quo. I talk about the status quo all the time. And, we have these, what we call the big three, and you will love this, Allison, where it's do no harm, break no laws, and then proceed till apprehended, right? And that's what that says to me, right?
Somewhere.
Right, like that's, so we also have some poll questions for the group today. So let's dive into some of these questions because I love it. And so the very first one is talking about entrepreneurship. And the question is, when it comes to entrepreneurship, and then this is going to pop up for us hopefully here, because I don't get to do the technical, so while we're waiting for that to pop up. When it comes to entrepreneurship, I am an entrepreneur. I am just starting my journey. I dream of becoming an entrepreneur. I am happy in corporate land. And then chat in and let us know. So we're going to give people, we talk about that. I loved how you were even courageous enough to go up to your brother's friend, right? And even say to them, no, it's not that I'm not without fear, because I think people think I live without fear. No, there's a lot of nights that I toss and turn in bed going, oh my God, what am I doing? Right? But you have to, I love that. Moving through it is such a great thing. So let's see if we can get these answers. We will see where people are, because I think this will be great here. So 31% are, I am an entrepreneur, and 15%, I am just starting my journey. I love this. I dream of becoming an entrepreneur. What's probably funny about that to me, Allison, I don't know about you, and I am happy in corporate land. I would love to talk around that, and then chat in and let us know. Yes. Did you dream of becoming an entrepreneur? I know for me personally, that was never something I thought I was going to do. And then one day I woke up and someone said, you're an entrepreneur and you own a business. And you're like,
yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So what about you? Did you dream about that?
No, I had dreams. My mother called me when like I was mentioned in Forbes very early on in launching Brenne as one of the 4 women in the entire world making like moves in the whiskey industry. And I remember my mother calling me and she was like, as only a mother could say, it's funny, I know you always said your name was going to be in lights, but this is just like a different version of what I expected for you. I was like, thanks. But I always dreamed of being the Broadway star. Like once my body kind of found its limit on ballet, I was like, great, I'll just pivot. I'll like go sing and dance on stage. It'll be great. So, and yet there was one day I can remember when I was in college, and again, I got, my college degree is in jazz dance. But I had this vision of myself in this custom suit, showing up to a theater with like files in my arm. Like I was the businesswoman, and maybe I was like donating money or something, or like my friends were on stage, but like I was coming into the theater as a very different person. And it was such a clear image, and I didn't know what it meant, who that version of Allison was. But I just remember thinking, I could kick ass in a suit. Like, interesting. And I just kind of went back to dance. So yeah, it was at some point the world pointed to me and was like, you're a disruptor, you're an entrepreneur.
Well, so let's talk about that, because you were planning on being, you know, an entrepreneur. You had that vision, and I want you to share this story because Dee Satter in here says, can you share your story on how you brought your whiskey to market, and where were your first sales? People have to hear where your first sales were, because I remember you talking about the bike. So
yeah,
so definitely.
So when I say I knew nothing about this industry, I genuinely mean I knew nothing about this industry. And today, all these years later, I think that was one of my greatest assets, right? Because it was all a discovery and it was exciting to me. And so I knew whiskey was going to take a while to age. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll still work my other job and I will learn about this industry. And I would go to a bar and say, well, how does that bottle get there on the shelf? And they were like, it gets delivered. And I was like, good. By whom? Who delivers this bottle? And they're like, a distributor? And I was like, cool. Google New York distributors. Oh, okay, there seems to be a lot. And then I just started asking all my bartender friends, are there distributors that you like to work with? Are there ones that you don't? Like if there's like a smaller brand, do you have ideas on who might service a brand better? All this stuff. So I did a lot of research. I actually wonder if you've done the same thing. Have you like written business plans? You write it and you like spend all this time doing it. And you're like, cool. And then you throw it out the window.
Well, so my team would probably say to you, and are laughing, those that are on here. Yeah, many of my business plans are on a napkin, and it's about 3 sentences. And then I hand it to them and say, go make it happen. Right? Like, yes. Yes.
Yeah, Brenne started on a cocktail napkin, but then I like put it to a computer. But I had taken some time and I wrote up a plan, like a go-to-market strategy of how I thought if I had a French whiskey in New York City, how could I sell this, right? What types of stores, what types of restaurants, where geographically in the city, what types of events might I want to participate in, right? What does this brand mean? Because the thing is, whenever you have a product that people like, especially something like whiskey, they're always going to ask for it for free and tell you it's going to be good publicity for your company, right? And there may be a lot of yeses to that, but someone's like, I got an art gallery, we're doing an art opening. If you can like drop off some bottles, we'll promote your brand. And then, so you have to kind of figure out, well, which avenues make the most sense for my brand? What percentage of, if I just bottled 1,000 bottles, what percentage of that am I willing to give away? Because that's kind of part of the booze industry, so I've learned, and samples and everything like that. And so I had this whole plan, right? And it felt really safe for me. I felt like, okay, I knew if this, then that, if not that, then this. And I called a bunch of distributors and I cold called them. And I was like, hey, like, this is who I am. I've got this thing. Can I just pick your brain? Can I share it with you? Can I talk to you? And I took meetings with every distributor in New York City who I thought would be a wonderful fit for my product. And every single man, and they, you know, white man too, they would take the plan and they were like, this is very interesting, Allison. Can we keep this and we'll call you? And I was like, absolutely, I can't wait for your call. They never called, no surprise. So I realized, you know, I had 1,000 cases of whiskey coming across the Atlantic and had already negotiated with my longshoremen what date that was arriving at what port, going into which warehouse, paying what federal excise tax. And I said, shit, I have invoices that are 90 days out in France that, like, for my label and my cork and my capsule and the glass that I owe money on. And I don't have the capital to pay those invoices. So I knew how many bottles I needed to sell by what point to get those accounts that bought it to give me the cash so I could literally turn it around and wire that money back to France to all my outstanding bills. And so I knew I had to do something because you can't sell liquor directly in the US. So I thought, well, shit, I'm already an importer. if no distributor is going to work with me, I'll just become a distributor. And I found some loopholes in a lot of the different laws, and I labeled myself as a distributor, and I didn't have any more cash. So I got a city bike membership, a shared bike program. And I would just put a case of Brenne in the front and literally bike it around Manhattan. And we launched October 1st, 2012, right? It was a Monday. And I had 2 weeks prior, I had my very first bottle ever. And so I was just walking it around New York City, like cupping my face to windows and liquor stores. I was like, knock, knock, knock. Do you want to talk to me about this? And this one store, Parc Ave Liquors, said, sure. And they are the mecca of like whiskey sales in New York City. 3 guys, the nicest people ever. They taste it. They're like, this is kind of interesting. This is amazing. When's it coming in? I said, October 1st. They said, are you sure? I said, I told you October 1st. I didn't realize how much people don't hold to their word in my industry, but I held to my word. And they're like, all right, we'll take 3 cases. And I was like, sounds great, right? I was like, that was a much bigger order than I expected. And at 8:59 on October 1st, 2012, Parc Ave Liquors calls my phone in the morning, and I was totally panicked. And I thought, oh my God, I had rented space on a liquor delivery truck for their 3 cases. And I thought, if they refuse that order, it's going to cost me $8 per case to put it back on the truck, $12 per case to put it back into a warehouse, plus all these other charges. And I was just like calculating the loss, right? And I was like, hello. And they said, how many cases are coming? And I'm thinking, oh my God, they're going to reject them. I said 3. And they go, well, we want 10. I was like, okay, you can have the other 7 tomorrow. And they were like, great. And for the next 8 weeks, they took 10 cases every single Monday, and it was enough revenue that I could flip it back to all those outdated invoices in print, and I had a business.
And you have a business. I love it. I love it. So gonna ask, we got a question here, Allison. Do you think you would have made the same choices or taken the same chances if you would have known the industry up front?
No, and I'll tell you why. I have discovered so much ugly in this industry, and so many ceilings, right? You think you have an idea and you hit a ceiling. You think you have, and it's not because of my gender. It's not because it's just because alcohol is one of the industries that is regulated at the state level. So you have federal hurdles, and then basically to sell your product in the US, you have 50 different laws to work within. And it is so complicated to do that and very prohibiting to innovative thinking. So I think I would have been way too, I think I just would have been really annoyed and frustrated, and that wouldn't have seemed creative for me. So I am grateful that I learned along the way versus knowing what I know today and then tried to do it.
Yeah, and you just mentioned something that those of us that have worked in the healthcare industry face every day, right? Like there's these federal things, and then every state has these other issues, and it's just, and probably if I would have known when I walked out of, left Walt Disney World and the Disney company to go to healthcare, like what the fuck was I thinking? I was in the happiest place on earth. Right? If I would have known what I would have known then, that may have been a completely different discussion. Yeah. So let's go to another poll question around risk, because I think that's what we're talking about here, right? Yeah. Like, if we would have really understood the risk, would we have really done it? Would you have really done it? So,
I'm grateful that I did it. It was the thing that changed my life for the better, exponentially, day after day. I live my dream. I'm so grateful for it, even with all the fear, the anxiety, and everything else. I'm so grateful I took that risk, and it completely changed my life. So I just want to say that.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. So second question here. When it comes to risk, I can best be described as scared as hell, calculated in my decisions, or hell yes, let's do this thing. And so while people are answering that, I'm going to go to another question here, because I love this, and you have a great perspective, I do in my industry, but where do you find the ability to be innovative when surrounded by restrictions?
Ooh,
So, right?
yeah, yeah, I love that because I consistently think of who is my competition, and I don't mean like even specific brands. I just mean what am I up against, right? If I'm like, there was a great book title of a book I read way back in the day. It was like, I'm like staring at the toes of giants, right? That's how I try and visualize where I am with my company versus where a Diageo is with any like major brand that you might know of, right? Like a Jameson or something like that. So I think, okay, if I'm really only staring at the toes of giants, what's the benefit there, right? Look how fast I can move. Look how I can connect with an audience in a way that they can't. You drink Jameson, you drink Don Julio, you drink any brand out there, Jack Daniels. Jack isn't alive. No one's showing up talking to Jack on Disruptor Connection. And so how do you build a community, right? That's pretty cool to be able to say, hey, like what you have in the bottle, you can talk to the person who didn't just make it in the distillery, but actually came up with the entire concept. And I think there we have an opportunity to build a community in an entirely different way. And that is a driving force.
Love that. Love that. That's the reason we started the Disruptor Connection. That's why the overarching company, the Disruptor League, is, you talked about holding on to that string. I realized several years ago that the innovation experience industry is built for corporate.
Yes.
But not built for individuals. And I said we were going to build a community for individuals to come and get together. And that's what we're doing here. That's what this is all about, is us coming together as a community, talking to not Jack Daniels, but talking to Allison Parc. Like when I hold this bottle, there's a part of you in it. I know that, I know the story, so it makes it even more special, to drink that. And be with that. Allison, you have Allison's rules, and if you have the one sheeter, it's on the back of it. And I'm going to just talk through them and answer a question. Then I'm actually going to let Allison give us a recipe, so we don't miss that as we go into the 4th of July weekend, and see where we're at that point. But Allison, you came up with this list of rules. The poll results. I forgot to even ask on that one when it comes to risk. So, 50% calculated in my decision, scared as hell. So majority here are, either calculated in their decision or scared as hell. There's 43% of us that say, hell yes, let's do this thing. So that leads actually into your rules. So, and I love this. Have a dedicated mission and clear intentions that drive grit and fire, right? Create, don't copy. Take neutral responses back to the drawing board.
Very important.
Yes, swim upstream. If we're here, let's really be here. And, that's actually a really powerful one. Embrace the power and possibility once you comprehend the math and science from ballet to whiskey, right? Listen to your gut more than you listen to other people. I live by that probably way too much. Don't give a shit about what you think others think about you. Amen. But do give a shit about how you make people feel. That comes back to the community and connection piece, right? And so those are some powerful rules. And one of the things we've asked the listeners, and when they listen to this after this and download, is, to what are your rules, and write those out and then send them to us at Disruptor Connection. You can hashtag Allison on Instagram. You can find her on there. You can find Brenne on there. You can find the Disruptor League on there. You can find Man on Fire. We'll make it happen. So we have a couple other questions that I really would like to get at, and then we're going to let you do the recipe. So how do you deal with the addition from the rush of solving for barriers, roadblocks, and fires. So let me give you what they put here. It seems that these things are rocket fuel for many entrepreneurs, but the dark side of that is that progress is slowed when things are systematized and become more routine. So I love what they say. How do you deal with the addition from the rush of solving for barriers and roadblocks and fires? I think you and I thrive on roadblocks, barriers, and fires, right? But once we get past it, can we get a little bored, right? How do you deal with that?
Well, I think sales numbers never keep me bored, right? If I am motivated by, and you can kind of like, you have to kind of figure out how do you define success, and then also how do you define the health of a company, and is that obviously in how your employees relate to you and to their roles and to their jobs and to the company values and everything like that. And then also at the very end of the day, if you just look at the bottom line, right? If I look at those numbers, I'm never satisfied with our sales. Never. We could be having the best year. I'm not satisfied, right? So I just don't have boredom in that. I might have boredom in, okay, well, we've been like plotting this course for a while now, in which case, if I start to get bored, then I have to ask my team if they think the messages that we've been sharing have been heard and received by the audience that we want it to be heard and received by. And if yes, then is it time to pivot again? And if no, then I just have to put the tape over my mouth and read someone's autobiography just to keep my brain excited.
Yeah, I love that. So we're going to let you, I'm going to ask this poll question, and I'm going to let you give us, because we're about 8 minutes out, I'm going to let you give us this recipe for us, a drink. So here's the poll question. It's 5 p.m. and I'm pouring. So it's 5 p.m. and I'm pouring wine, beer, whiskey, a cocktail, tea or coffee, water, club soda, or other. Chat in and let us know. So it's 5 o'clock and I'm pouring. So we are going to ask Allison, I promised the reason we did today is I said she would give us an amazing recipe to take into the weekend. So go for it, Allison.
All right, I'm just going to move my little camera down. This couldn't be easier. And apologies that my ice machine is still broken. It was broken in our first time, and it's continuously broken because it's COVID and we can't get anyone here to fix it. But this is, I love people who love whiskey. By the way, if you're considering this, thank you very much. What to expect with this is, while it is a single malt, and most people think, oh, single malt, they might taste like Band-Aids if you've had like Lafroig or Ardbeg or, peaty, smoky. This is not that. It is intense in flavors, but it's intense on the absolute opposite end of the spectrum. So think more creme brulee, bananas Foster, blueberry muffin tops. Like, it's just super friendly, super approachable. It's an amazing summertime whiskey. So that's what I'm going to show you. My favorite easy summertime cocktail. I'm going down, and you see, okay, you can see my little, oh good, you can see all the books that prop up my, my whiskey bottle. So I just take a little Brenne, and forgive me, team, pretend that this glass is filled with ice, right? Then I would just pour in, you could do 2 ounces, but really just kind of till your heart's content of Brenne. I'm gonna do a little bit more. And then you take your Perrier or any kind of sparkling water that you love. And again, I wish this was filled with ice, but you pour that right on top. If there was ice, it would go all the way to the top. And I call this the champagne of whiskeys. Who doesn't love a little bubble? And then you take a lemon, and I like to do a little wheel. Take out the seeds. And voila. Super refreshing, really delicious, very clean and crisp, and just an amazing way to kind of celebrate summer. Again, pretend there's ice in here.
Yeah. Now, let's be very real. I am not pretending. I have some ice, and I just poured it straight because that's the way I have come to enjoy yours. So I am going to sip and wish that everybody there on the West Coast at 8:40 in the morning could be sipping with us, right? So cheers to this. It's like dessert this morning. Oh, see, the colder it gets, the better it gets. I'm telling you. So, Allison, when you were looking at where to market, how do you make those decisions with state regulations and even individual county regulations vary so much? And I think you also we need to make sure that we tell everybody how they can get this no matter where they're at, how we can get them covered. So, yeah. How do you deal with those regulations?
So, you know, you just have to learn the laws. I think you also need to, and I think you've done this very well, you've got to build a great team and trust that your team and empower your team to do the things that they need to do to move the needle forward, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm so grateful. We have an incredible team, and a lot of these people have had much more time in this industry than I had when I started, or maybe even today. And I look at each state, I try, right? We always try and like, okay, well, what's annoying about it and how can I take annoyance and make it fun? This is so annoying. Okay, let's make a game of it. So I try and look at each state as like, what's the obstacle? How am I gonna climb it? What's a creative, is there a creative way to climb it? If not, if we just have to go through it, awesome. Who's my best bulldozer of a personality and go tackle Pennsylvania? You know, like, so you just have to look at, like, for me, I have to write everything down. So I just like, what are the obstacles? What are the goals? What's the barrier to entry? And who can help?
So we had our one on here from PA. How does someone in PA get this, Allison?
So good. So first of all, if you live in a controlled state, we are registered, I think, in all of the controlled states, maybe like 2 aren't, but we're definitely registered in Pennsylvania. All of the fine wine and spirits stores, it's like a level of controlled states. There's a lot of them in Pennsylvania. They all either have Brenne or have the ability to order. Actually, every state store in Pennsylvania has the ability to order Brenne. So it's completely on the approved list. Pennsylvania is one of our best markets. So if it's not on the shelf, it really should be. And maybe just with COVID, they haven't been able to restock quite as quickly. But you can also go to our website. We have a store finder there. It pulls data from the last 90 days, but it will help you. Otherwise, you can email me and I can connect you with retailers who can ship. But reservebar.com and Drizzly in most places will be able to.
I will tell you, I use reservebar.com and I've had no issues sending it to people all over. Oh, so, yes. And they're the ones that etch the bottles for us too. So,
yeah, Reserve.
Yes. So,
yeah, yes. Reservebar.com, they do etching, they'll ship everywhere. It's a good place. And then if you want it like in the hour, Drizzly in most places can deliver within the hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Allison, we could keep going, but I love having this conversation with you. Again, for those of you, look at Allison's rules, do the little assignment we gave you and thought process to come up with your rules, hashtag those at Disruptor Connection, put it on social media. As you see in the chat, you can get Reserve Bar, go find, it's amazing. It's actually great even at 11:45. I'm really enjoying this on a Thursday. It's Friday somewhere. Next Disruptor Connection is Friday, July 17th. And it's Healing the Divide, Designing for the Just World. We did this one 2 weeks ago. With just Robin Beers, but we have an exciting special guest coming up with us, Cheryl D. Miller, 50 years experience in design, amazing woman. She will be joining us. The registration link is here in the chat area. Go register for that. Make sure to join us. It's going to be a powerful next part of Healing the Divide, which we're going to do for several of these. And as well, the survey, it's going to be, we would love your feedback. Please take the post-event survey. It will, it's when you close out here, you should get sent right to it, or it's even in the chat space right now. Allison, thank you so much. I can't, I feel like we've been best friends for years. I can't wait till like I come to New York or we end up someplace to where we can actually sit and enjoy this drink together. So thank you for today. Thank you for sharing your love with us. And that's what Brenne is, and we've come to love it so much. And thank you to everyone else, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks. I'll be on the chat.
Awesome. Bye.